What is up, everybody? I hope you're having a wonderful day. I wanted to take the time to talk about melee combat in Tactics Ogre, and I wanted to go over my opinions and thoughts of why melee tends to really fall off and be very not viable late game. Why I feel melee kind of becomes just a novelty. It's not nearly as strong as ranged or spells. Mostly, spells and magic tend to trump melee. Even a bow doesn't really compare with spells. So, bows and crossbows kind of drop off too. And I just kind of want to go over that. So, what do I mean? Well, if you play the game and you get to the post game, and you're doing early Palace of the Dead and stuff, it's not so big of a deal. You start doing Hanging Gardens and maybe, floors, 70 on up in Palace of the Dead. You go into Coda, you go into some of the areas that are meant to be the core challenge of the game, especially when, I'm not even there yet, but especially when you start fighting enemies that are level 55, level 60, level 65, level 70, you slowly realize that melee is not the way to go. Because it's just, there's three things that make melee kind of difficult. One, you have to get into position to do damage. So you have to move up and expose yourself not only to other melee units, but ranged units. You're closing the gap so ranged units can hit you easier. Then you have to get right next to a unit, which most times in melee, you're going to get a mosh pit going on where other units are right next to you and everybody's kind of clustered, and that can be a problem. And the third thing with melee is melee does not hit that hard. Unless you uber specialize, and even then, summon tier 1 can outdo a lot of the damage melee can do. Summon tier 1s can hit for, on average, 600 damage, 500 damage, and then you get summon tier 2 and you're just nuking stuff. And this kind of plays into the fact that summons are super strong, and like draconic magic and a couple of the other things that just, you get some of the late game equipment and gear that helps magic just escalate to degrees beyond comprehension. If you want to clear content effectively and quickly with less hassle, the more magic you bring, the more summons you bring, the better it is. Now, my party I use for most of the time, I used him as a Rune Fencer. I feel Rune Fencer still holds lots of value because it has access to summons. So I bring a Rune Fencer and I bring my 2 White Knights. And you could argue the White Knight is a melee unit, which I would say the White Knight is a melee unit, but he's not there to melee. He's there to velocity shift and chirp with the birds, right? Yeah, see, they agree. He's there to velocity shift and maybe paralysis blade if he can. He's not doing damage. My White Knight is not doing damage. He's a melee unit, but he's just utility. He is just a body, and he might, use Guardian Force to help out, maybe throw a heal or something, and he'll chip away. He's not damage. Neither one of them are. They're pure utility. So Denim and 2 White Knights is number 1. Number 1 and 2. Number 3 is Princess Koshua. She is one of the nukes on the team, also able to heal and do other things. So that's my 4th unit. My 5th unit would probably be a Patriarch or a Matriarch. If I could bring 2 Matriarchs, I would. Access to summons, very strong, very high damage, very good survivability. So that's 5 or 6. Now, you'll realize that a lot of the later levels, a lot of the later battles, they have a lot of restrictions on party limits. Very rarely are you going to get a 12-man party, and very rarely are you even going to get a 10. You might get a 10 a little bit. You're generally going to see 6, 7, 8s, maybe a 9. So with those party limits, you don't have a lot of options to bring units you might like or prefer when you need to get certain things fulfilled. So I already have 5 units. What I'll also do is I might bring in, the best warlock in the game, Rudlum, if I'm feeling really risky. But generally, if you look here, this is my party setup. Now this is a 9-person party. And we got to have Canopus, who's a Rune Fencer. So we have Rune Fencer, 2 White Knights, Rune Fencer, 2 Matriarchs, summons, another Rune Fencer. So that's 5 summons. Princess, that's 6 summon spells. And I don't know why I have this Cleric here. What's that doing there? This would be my 8-man party, which is generally what you're locked into, 8 or 7 for a lot of battles. At least I've been finding a lot of battles, 8 to 7. And as you can see, 6 of my units can cast summons. And then these guys are just here. I wouldn't consider any of these units that cast summons melee units, maybe hybrid. Rune Fencers could be considered hybrid. We got 3 Rune Fencers, 2 Matriarchs, and a Princess. And we got birds that just don't want to be quiet today, guys. They are mad. They are not happy. So that is kind of my like party that I generally bring, and it gets the job done most of the time. And you know, I don't bring Terror Knight, no beasts. You know, sometimes I bring Ranger as kind of a meme fun thing, but you know, even Hoplites and Juggernauts, which I love, I don't really run those. You know, any kind of melee unit, I'm not really bringing to the field. And that's just because, like I said, the further you get, the more you realize melee just, you can't make it work. I mean, I guess you really could if you really tried and you just like threw stat charms into all your melee units and gave them the best weapons and you're just like, look at me. Yeah, okay, you can invest. That takes a lot of time. You got to farm charms. So I'm just saying, initial, out the gate, like playing the way the game is, melee really can't hold up at the very late stages of the game. Sure, melee is useful for 75% of the game. Even 80% of the game, melee has a good amount of value. But at the end of the day, me personally, I find myself cutting the majority of melee classes and rolling with the OP range classes that have access to the best spells in the game. That's just my thoughts and opinions, though, guys. Do keep in mind, you know, you can do whatever you want. The game is designed. You can play it. If you want to run a full squad of melee, full squad of beasts, you go right ahead, because you could probably make it work if you tried. And that's what makes the game super fun and super enjoyable. With a little bit of investment, a little bit of work, you can make even the most crude tactics work. Are they the most optimal? No, but will they work? Sure. Yeah, the game's easy enough. They'll work. You can finagle it in there and min-max it and get it going. So, and like I said, that's why I love the game. I love that nothing is useless. Nothing is out, like, just pointless to use. Anything with investment can, you know, be viable. But overall, I do feel... I feel very strongly that melee is very weak later in the game. Very weak and very just not optimal if you're trying to make your life easy. But let me know what you guys think. How do you feel about melee? Do you find it falls off? Are you actually at late game stuff, like real late game, like Coda and, you know, upper floors of Palace of the Dead, you know, Hanging Gardens, you know, where are you at? Do you feel melee to be, you know, the weaker of the damage types, the weaker of the classes? Because I do. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Until then, later guys, peace out, have a good one.